All right. So, hi everyone, and welcome to today's LinkedIn Live session. I'm Emma Carpenter with 12 Weeks to Wellness. 12 Weeks to Wellness has provided coaching for employees across the country for over 20 years, working with organizations to develop comprehensive wellness programming, and coaching is our primary business, is what we do. So today in our LinkedIn Live here, we are diving into a topic that affects us all, planning for time off. I'm thrilled to be joined with Brandy Zimmerman here today. So excited to have you here, Brandy. So
Thanks.
Brandy is a dedicated advocate for mental health and the CEO and founder of Thriving Workplaces, which specializes in taking workplace mental health and psychological safety from theory to practice. In her work, she collaborates with organizations to address the underlying factors that affect mental health at work while equipping individuals and leaders with the skills and tools they need to build a thriving workplace. So today in this topic, we'll be sharing some practical strategies to ensure everyone can enjoy a stress-free break and return to work smoothly. Now, I feel personally this is a very timely topic. Packing up myself, going on vacation next week, really having to think about how to prepare for that myself, how to prepare my team, while still really maintaining that mental health and well-being. Because so often, we are hyper focused on, we want to make sure that we can fully unplug, but it's really stressful to try to make that happen beforehand. And so why is it, Brandy, so important that leaders are able to unplug during their time off?
Well, it's such a great question. And I mean, it's so important to plan well for your time off because the challenge is that a lot of folks don't actually end up taking all of their paid time off. And a lot of the reason when we read studies or surveys about it, the reason given is that it's too much work before and after, right? And we've all had that experience of there's a lot to do to get ready for vacation. There's a bunch of catch up to do because for most of us, no one's really doing the work while we're gone. We can assign some of it, but there's usually something that's waiting for us. And so if we're able to take a little bit of time and prepare for both the leaving and the returning, that helps it be a little bit smoother for us, gives us that opportunity to fully disengage from the workplace while we're on break. And why it's important for us to do that as much as possible is not just because we're not being paid for working right then. It's also that it's really good for our mental bandwidth. Having that time off and that time to unplug and recharge has been shown to have really great benefits for both our ability to focus, our overall productivity, and that feeling of being recharged when we return to work. But what can sometimes get in the way of that is if we have a really chaotic, like leaving for vacation and a chaotic coming back. And that's where doing some of that pre planning can be really helpful. Taking the time to make sure that you block off some time both on your first couple of days before you leave and right when you get back to take care of any loose ends that crop up, making sure you're being really communicative with your team, not just the people who report to you, but also the ones that you report to, making sure everyone is clear when you're leaving and when you're coming back. Because so often we're like, okay, so I'm leaving on the 4th and I'm gone for 2 weeks, which is fine. But you know what? Your boss is probably not doing the math of what date that is. And so the more in the days leading up to and even weeks leading up to our vacation that we can talk about, I'm gone from this period to this period, like and really clear at the dates, it can really help people to plan so that, it's not the sort of thing where you're like the day before vacation, you're like, all right, so I'm back on the 10th. And they're like, wait, I thought you were back on the 4th, or something like that. And all of a sudden you have a rush project while you have had other stuff you were planning to wrap up.
I really like when some people are adding their absence alerts to their email as well right now, so that you can kind of see that it's coming up, and everybody can always go back to that and remind themselves when they're going to be away.
Oh yeah, and that's such a great plan too. And letting everyone who you work with know as much advance notice and reminding them. And the most important thing to remember is that everyone is kind of a little stressed right now. Everyone has a little bit of a tapped bandwidth, which means that their ability to remember minutia and details is not as great as it's supposed to be. For example, like in my workplace, my colleague just took 2 weeks off. She's back this week. And the number of times in the month leading up, and I had tons of notice, the number of times I was like, well, why aren't we doing this at the end of June? And she's like, I'm away, like, and it was on my wall calendar. It was on my like calendar at work, but just that reminder was really helpful because of course I was focused on other pieces and was like, okay, so when are we going to get this thing done? Checking in on priorities and kind of forgetting that there were 2 weeks where she wasn't going to be around. And, it's important to have that disengage, that opportunity to disengage and unplug. But like the more that I got reminded of it, it finally sunk in. And I was like, right, okay, last 2 weeks of June, it's just me. I'm going to do the things myself. It's cool. And so just having that reminder is really helpful. It can also be really helpful to make sure that if you work with clients or on different project teams, to let everyone whose work regularly intersects with yours know ahead of time. And then every time you send them an email in like the week or so leading up, just a reminder, I'm away this day to this day. We'll follow up on this date. That kind of thing can really help. And then another thing I also really recommend is have a way to for people to get in touch with you in case of emergency that's not your email. One of the things that I've learned over the years is that the level of urgency for someone to send an email is kind of low. Like an email emergency is like here, but for it to be so urgent that they're going to pick up the phone and use the phone app and dial your number, it's usually way up here. So if you tell people, this is my phone number, this is where you can call me in case of emergency, it's highly unlikely that anyone's going to call you. But if you're checking your email for emergencies, odds are you're going to get sucked into every little thing that comes through, and it's a way harder to disconnect. And
Well,
another
let's
fun thing with the phone is you could also set up a special ringtone so that if you hear that ringtone, you know automatically that it's work.
interesting, yeah, for sure. So let's talk about the message that we send as leaders and as well, and sort of the culture that we create around this. Because really, we're trying to make sure that we create a balanced environment that supports both productivity and personal well-being. And the culture plays a big role in that. And that's, of course, the leader's behavior of what they're communicating and the message then that sends. So what are some things that leaders can do then to support their team's well-being and workload management in making sure that the employees also feel that it is okay to unplug during that time off and actually not check your email during that time?
I love that question. I actually think that one of the best things that you can do, and it takes a little bit of remembering, you might need to put a post-it note to remind you on your computer, but when you've got someone on vacation, schedule send every email to them. Don't send it for while they're away. If you can, almost every email application now has that opportunity that you can schedule it for another time. So schedule send it for like a couple of days after they're back if it's not urgent, or later the first day they're back. If it's urgent, have it go into their inbox the first time when they're back. And also, I also encourage folks to include like at the beginning of the message header, some kind of indication about whether this is priority or not, or what kind of priority it is. This is especially helpful for overwork vacations, because, or like for people who are on vacation, because we say that we're not going to check our emails, but we sometimes do. And so if there's something that's urgent, say like urgent, handle by Monday, if they're back on Monday, then that helps with email triage when your staff members first sitting down. Or if it's something that's like FYI, you can look at this later in the week. Just putting that at the beginning of the message subject can be really helpful. Now, sometimes we'll forget. The number of times where I have accidentally sent an email or I've tagged someone in a document so they got the notification, even though the email like that's going to talk about it is scheduled to send a couple days later. These things happen, but as much as possible, I think it's really important. It's also helpful if in the days leading up to a staff member's vacation, ideally at the beginning of the week, but so if we've got like, if say we're going on vacation next week, or you got a staff member going on vacation starting next week. So as soon as possible in the week before, you want to have a meeting where you're going to sit down and just go over where all of the projects are at, what they've got on their plate for to wrap up before they leave. And then schedule some time. Usually the day after they get back is best. So they've got some time to like put out any fires that emerged when they first came, but that kind of check in to give them an update on anything that they missed while they were gone. We often send these updates by email, but if we can have like that one-to-one conversation, that can help it be a little bit quicker, smoother of a conversation. But then it can also be an opportunity to ask questions like, okay, and is there anything that I need to be aware of this project while you're away? Is there any messages I should be looking for from the client, or any project deadlines that might be coming up for us, that kind of thing. It's also helpful if the day before they leave or 2 days before they leave, ideally, or if it's going to be the day before, try and do it in the morning. Just kind of do that check-in and see where everything's at. If everything, went according to plan, or if there's still a couple more things left to do, just to kind of have that check-in. And then again, when they get back, sitting down, talking about the priorities, what's changed since they were away, anything they missed that they need to be aware of, that kind of thing. And it can also be really helpful then, as much as possible, if you do send an email, just be like, don't worry about this till you get back. If you forget in the subject line, you can put it in like the first email, something like that. But then also making sure that you have a way that if there's something urgent, you can reach out to them. So they're not going to check their email. They know that if you need them, you're going to text or call. And then save those for like the real fires, like the actual emergency, not just like, I don't want to forget this. Can I just tell you, get this out of my brain into yours? When you've got those things of the, I need to get it out of my brain into yours, schedule send emails are fantastic for that. And then again, one of the best ways that leaders can help their teams take time off and disconnect is to model that behavior on our own vacations. When we're checking email on our vacation or texting or calling with ideas or sending messages on Slack or Teams or whatever we use, that sends the message that it's not actually okay to disconnect. And your staff are going to do what you do, no matter what you say. So that's why it's really important for you to have your own firm boundaries as much as possible.
And it's an interesting point because I do find that a lot of leaders also, they may send an email about location, but they kind of preface it with that, just because I'm doing it, I'm definitely not expecting you to do it. But is that still okay? Like, what message are we still sending an unofficial message that this is sort of the culture, this is sort of still what we do? Or
Yeah, I mean, I think it's like, for example, if you've got a work culture that flexible scheduling and scheduling that works for the individual is how you work it. And so some people have work days that start at 9, whereas other people might do some hours like after the kids go to bed or something. Then it's a little bit different. That's where you can see more of that. I'm sending this on my work hours. I expect you to respond during your work hours, not off the clock. That can be more of the that helps kind of establish that flow and that cultural expectation. But if you're doing it on your vacation, you are sending the message, we check our email on vacation. We don't really unplug. Even if you preface it with, I'm doing this, unless you tell them, hey, I'm going to check my email twice on vacation just to make sure that I didn't miss anything. And I'm only connecting with you folks during that because I've got an out of office that says I'm out of the office. That's another thing I also like to say to folks is like, don't turn your out of office responder into a liar. If you said you're not going to be checking your email or responding to emails till you get back, schedule send it for when you get back. If you like want to just reply to it, because some of us like to go through and just double check, make sure we hadn't missed anything, make sure there wasn't anything urgent that somehow slipped through the cracks. And that's okay if that works for you, but don't send any messages when you have an out of office responder that's saying, I'm not sending messages. Otherwise, people take it as a free for all to start sending you emails. And then that makes it harder to keep that boundary.
Okay, so one hole that I tend to fall into too is that how as we're preparing then to get ready for vacation, then there are all these things that we need to do to finish up before we go. But there are also a lot of times projects and things that I feel like I want to get done just because it'll feel really good to get them off my desk. And that is a lot of times what pushes it over the edge that I end up having too many things to do. And in the end, I end up probably very likely not being able to complete that anyways. And then it kind of feels like I failed in the first place. So that's the other thing. Like just think about what are the things that are necessary to do and what can actually wait until after your return. So that kind of leads me into the last question. So what are some strategies that we as leaders then can implement to be able to reintegrate into work successfully when we come back, and what can we do to help our staff do that as well, while still ensuring that we keep productivity and well-being top of mind.
Yeah, great question. I think one of the best things that you can do is try to have nothing scheduled that first morning you come back. Ideally, the first day, that gives you time to catch up on anything, or if there was something that was on your nice to do, but not must to do list that you didn't get to before vacation, maybe you can wrap it up then. But just giving yourself that time to kind of do that email triage, respond to stuff in the order of urgency. Look what's coming up on your calendar, block in some time for the new priorities or to catch up with folks on things that you missed to make sure that you're, brought back up to speed. That scheduling that time can be really important. It's really hard to keep that time blocked off. And I'm going to say that knowing how hard it is because everyone wants to meet with you and follow up. And they're like, well, you're gone for like 2 weeks. So let's book an appointment. And it's like, try and keep them short if you have to, and make sure that you leave as much time as you can to get caught up. Because one of the hardest things that we do and the most stress inducing things that we can do for ourselves is to walk into a meeting with our leader the day we come back before we've had a chance to look through our email, right?
Mm-hmm.
I have done that. And let me tell you, it's terrible. I don't recommend that to anyone. So giving yourself that time to check to see, what's come in, what do I need to deal with, and really blocking that off can be helpful. And I also recommend trying to keep some time, like sorry, this is my little kitten. He's come to say hello. I'm going to pop him back down. I knew one of my pets was going to come say hi. They often do. But spending that time to like give yourself, I like to call it buffer time or chaos time or overflow time. So as much as you can during your first week back, leave a couple of blocks of time, maybe a half hour, maybe 90 minutes if you can squeeze it in to just handle anything that came up while you were gone. So then you're not feeling overly stressed about what's there. I also recommend taking some time and kind of dividing your to-do list into the like must do's, like the really got to do these things, to the someone would like me to do this, but it's not mission critical in the same way, or it's like tier 2, so I'll get to it as soon as I can, but not necessarily today. And then also, like I said, in that first day or two back, having some time with your supervisor, or if you're the manager, having some time with your employee who's returned from vacation, just to kind of double check where priorities are at, make sure that everyone's in alignment with what's the must haves and the nice to haves. Just because sometimes while we're away, there's organizational priorities can shift. And so just making sure that everyone's on the same page can be really helpful for stress levels.
Yeah. All right. Well, thank you so much, Brandy. Such good advice across the board. And so I encourage everybody to, well, where would they find you, Brandy, if they have questions or want to check out the work?
Yeah, so we're here on LinkedIn. It's linkedin.com/IN Brandy Zimmerman, which is Zimmerman. And then we also have a company page called Thriving Workplaces. If you find us on the internet, it's thrivingworkplaces.ca. So for my American friends, it's .ca for Canada as opposed to .com. And you can find out a bit more about our work there. And, if you've got any questions about this, or you're like, oh my gosh, like, how do I strategize on this? Or something that came up that, something we talked about today sparked a question, feel free to send me a DM on LinkedIn. I'd love to hear from you.
Perfect. Yeah. Or you can also connect with 12 Weeks to Wellness on LinkedIn as well. Subscribe to our newsletter. Stay up to date with more of these LinkedIn lives will come later in the summer as well. There'll be one in August as well. So thank you so much for tuning in, everybody, and have a lovely summer. And hopefully you all get some time off where you're truly unplugged and can get some rest and recovery. Thanks, everybody.
Bye, everyone.